If the Packers want to believe that their offensive team build is the right path forward, look no further than the AFC Championship game. I'll explain what I mean.
You are Locked On Packers, your daily Green Bay Packers podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
You are Locked On Packers, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. I'm Peter Bukowski, and I cover the Packers for The Leap, a newsletter I would love for you to subscribe to. Follow me on Twitter, Peter_Bukowski. Follow the podcast on Twitter, Locked On Packers. Like us on Facebook. Subscribe to the podcast to iTunes, Spotify, Google Podcasts, wherever you find podcasts, you will find Locked On Packers, the #1 Packers podcast on the internet, and the show for fans who know what happened. They want to know why and how. Thanks to everyone who makes Locked On Packers their first listen every day. We hope you like starting your day with us as much as we like starting our day with you. Super Bowl 59 is here, and there's no better way to make every play more exciting than with FanDuel Sportsbook. New customers can bet just $5 and you'll win. And if you win, you'll score $200 in bonus bets. Download the app or go to FanDuel.com to get started. I saw a lot of things in the AFC Championship game that seemed highly relevant to the Green Bay Packers. And what stood out to me is I watched both of these teams that lack elite skill talent. I understand Travis Kelce is a really good football player. I believe he had 2 catches in the game. The Bills do not have that alpha #1 receiver. And you can say, but Peter, it's Josh Allen and it's Patrick Mahomes. And that's true. Jordan Love is not those guys, at least not yet. Although this is where I also have to push back and point out that in the second half of last year, he played as well as they did or better. Now, in the biggest moments, we've seen Patrick Mahomes come through time and time again. We've seen Josh Allen come through. We're waiting on some of those from Jordan Love, the comebacks and the putaways, those kinds of things. He hasn't had that many opportunities to do it. But when I look at the way those teams are built, starting with Buffalo, that is the closest one-to-one to me, where they built and they reworked that offensive line. They built an offense. They let Stephon Diggs go, and they said, this is a team built around Josh Allen's unique ability, his playmaking, and a kick you in the teeth run game. But what they can do that the Packers couldn't do consistently last year in the playoffs was create explosives in the run game. James Cook is an explosive back. Saquon Barkley in the NFC Championship game, an explosive back. The Chiefs ultimately sealed the game with fast to the flat. All this man coverage, create a little bit of trash, make the linebackers and the safeties sift through it, and you sneak a running back out. There's nothing special about that. There's nothing Saquon Barkley-y about that. They did it to Isaiah Pacheco for a first down and to Samaje Perine for a first down. These are not elite players. Josh Jacobs is better than those guys. You would think he would create more gravity than those guys as well. But what Andy Reid had was a bag full of every man beater in the book. They ran fast to the flat 100 times. Not really, but it felt like that. The Packers just didn't have enough creative schematic answers to make up for the fact that their receivers are not just going to go be ball winners one-on-one. But guess what? None of the receivers in the AFC Championship game are that anymore. Amari Cooper at one point in his career, sure. Travis Kelce at one point in his career, sure. Not right now. Xavier Worthy at some point in the future in his career, maybe. Keon Coleman at some point in the future of his career, maybe. But they used scheme. They used the playmaking of their quarterback. And here's the other thing that I think is essential and is a lesson that the Packers must learn. If you are not using the legs of your quarterback, and I'm talking about by design, you are missing out on opportunities. Patrick Mahomes, I think he has, Nick Wright from FS1 tweeted out that they have 3, since he dislocated his kneecap, which is why the Packers played Matt Moore, was it, in 2019? Because he dislocated his knee on a sneak. They've run 3 design run calls with Mahomes. 2 of them were in that game. Josh Allen is a designed run player, you can use Jordan Love that way. He is at least, and I've said this, I feel like 100 times on this show, on X, on Blue Sky, on The Leap, Jordan Love is at least as athletic as Patrick Mahomes. He doesn't quite have the feel for when to take off. He wants to make plays from the pocket. But he has the ability, the running ability, and he has the fortitude. I mean, remember him taking off and trying to juke guys against the Falcons and the Saints, the 2-point conversion on the zone read where he scores and sends Demario Davis into the netherworld. I mean, he can be a runner that is impactful. Man coverage, Josh Allen, we saw it on that what could have been that last drive. Josh Allen takes off on 2nd and long or 3rd and long, picks up a first down with his legs. Jordan Love is capable of doing that. Now, he was hurt last year. But nothing I saw said to me, well, those teams, they don't have alpha number 1 receivers. Now, on the NFC side, A.J. Brown, pretty big factor. Terry McLaurin, pretty big factor. Those quarterbacks, Jaden Daniels, Jalen Hurts, are not Josh Allen and Patrick Mahomes. So is it the case that if your quarterback isn't Josh Allen, Patrick Mahomes, Lamar Jackson, that you need those other guys? Potentially. I think that would be a fair counter in all of this. To say, okay, Jordan Love is actually closer to Jalen Hurts than Patrick Mahomes, and so he needs that. I don't know, frankly, if that's true. I don't think the Packers lost to the Eagles because they didn't have an alpha number 1 receiver. They lost to the Eagles because everyone was hurt. But also, I felt like they didn't have as dialed in a game plan as the Chiefs or the Bills. And they didn't keep doing the things that were working over and over again. They got a little greedy. The quick game worked over and over. They didn't stay patient. And had they, maybe the outcome of that game would have been different. Now, they were also off on their details. We've talked about the Dontavian Wicks not stacking Darius Slay and Malik Heath running the route at the wrong depth by 5 yards. And the Bo Melton interception happens when you're just trying to make a play at the end of the game. If you think Jordan Love even is in, let's say so full transparency, I think there is a tier of players at the top. I think it is Lamar Jackson, Josh Allen, Patrick Mahomes. They are in a tier. I think there is a subset of a next tier that is like Joe Burrow, Justin Herbert, Matthew Stafford, Jordan Love. But that tier really is bigger to me. It's the we're good but not great quarterbacks most of the time, but are capable of extremely high level play. Now, I think Jaden Daniels probably belongs in that group now. And then the next group is like Sam Darnold, Jared Goff, Jalen Hurts, Brock Purdy. I'm probably missing a couple. Geno Smith. They're solid players, good players, but they really need the supporting cast around them. They really need the offensive infrastructure. I mean, Jalen Hurts, all-time backpack to the Super Bowl. I mean, 2 Super Bowls for that, for the quality of passer that he is outrageous. But the team is really good. I think Jordan Love is good enough to be an elevator of the talent around him, but then you have to have explosiveness that is not quarterback created. And it struck me that Marshawn Lloyd could have been that. I don't want to say could have been that. And I think that was part of the intention behind getting someone like Marshawn Lloyd is you have to create easy opportunities. You want to run fast to the flat? Josh Jacobs is not super fast to the flat. Isaiah Pacheco, pretty fast. Samaje Perine, probably not that big a difference with Josh Jacobs. But you saw the James Cook play when he goes into the flat and has green grass in front of him. All of a sudden, it's 30 yards. He's out the gate. That is what someone like Marshawn Lloyd can bring. So you add that element to this Packers offense where you can create explosives off short underneath throws, off little plays to the flat. Just easy stuff. I didn't feel like Josh Allen and Patrick Mahomes were going throw for throw, bar for bar. Now, like the Mac Hollins throw, the Dalton Kincaid throw that should have been caught. Those are great plays. Patrick Mahomes escaping pressure, finding Xavier Worthy down the field. Those are great plays individually from your quarterback. But I didn't feel like this was one of those like, hey, these two guys are just operating at optimal performance. They're creating everything. No, the offense created a lot of it for them. It was a lot of design. It was a lot of run after catch. And that's not a knock on those players. We know what those players are and what they're capable of doing and being. But in these big games, you need everything to work in concert. No one is so talented that you can just out-talent your way. And no one is so good schematically that you can make up for all of these structural deficiencies where you just don't have the talent. It has to be both. The Packers, to me, are well coached enough and talented enough. It didn't quite fit and mix together. But if you want evidence for how it can work, and I didn't think Josh Allen and Patrick Mahomes, for as entertaining a game as that was, they didn't play like superheroes in that game. We're just like, well, no one, they play a different sport than everyone else. It did, the 15-second game felt like that. This one didn't. This was a really entertaining, really fun game. Those guys played great, but didn't feel like that. Jordan Love is capable of getting to that level of play. He's capable of being a weapon with his legs. They have the talent to create enough in a playoff atmosphere against the top level defenses. And had they had Marshawn Lloyd, I would have said they had the explosiveness in the run game, playmakers after the catch. Tucker Kraft also could have been involved more. They just have to pull the right levers. Andy Reid pulled every right lever. He had every man beater in the book. They don't have guys that are Juju Smith-Schuster's out there in crunch time. But they got the perfect coaching performance to go with maybe the greatest quarterback we've ever seen, who's always going to make the right play, it seems. That's not always going to be Jordan Love. He's got a little bit more of that Josh Allen, let's just huck it and let's drop the snap to start the game. This is what I mean. You can invite that variance as long as you have either A, the talent to overcome some of those mistakes, or you have the coaching and the scheme to help make things easy when you need it to be. I think the Packers have that. It just didn't click the right way this year. Now, there could be some changes coming to their offensive infrastructure. They might have to replace Adam Stenavich. They do have to replace the quarterback's coach. What do they need out of those spots? We'll talk about it next on Locked On Packers. As a small business owner, your work doesn't end when the clock hits 5. Your business is always on your mind, which means when it's time to hire, you need a partner that works just as hard as you do. That's where LinkedIn Jobs comes in. When you clock out, LinkedIn clocks in. LinkedIn makes it easy to post your job for free, share it with your network, and get qualified candidates all in one place. Post your job. LinkedIn's new features can help you write job descriptions and then quickly get your job in front of the right people with deep candidate insights. And here's a pro tip. Add the hashtag hiring frame to your profile picture to double your reach to qualified candidates. No wonder 72% of small businesses say LinkedIn helps them find high quality hires. Post your job for free at linkedin.com/lockedonnfl. That's linkedin.com/lockedonnfl to post your job for free. Terms and conditions apply. Adam Stenavich is staying put for the moment with the Green Bay Packers. Jeff Hafley staying put for the moment, though that one is a little bit less for the moment. He interviewed with the New York Jets for their head coaching job, but did not get it. So it seems like he's going to be the defensive coordinator. That is something, though, that they need to figure out because they need to get a defensive line coach in. Casey Rogers was someone that my pal Jason Hirschhorn over at The Leap, a newsletter we would love for you to subscribe to, did a little bit of reporting on and found that Casey Rogers was a very desirable candidate for the Packers in particular. They really liked him, but he's going to Detroit, has a past history with Dan Campbell. And so there's that part of this. What I really wanted to look at, though, was what's going on the offensive side. Adam Stenavich had a chance to interview for the Seattle Seahawks offensive coordinator job. Now, remember, the Packers do not have to let him interview for offensive coordinator jobs. He is the offensive coordinator. But it would be customary for a coach to say a non-play calling OC could go somewhere where he's able to call plays because that is the way that you become a head coach. Most of the time, you're not going to become a head coach off of an offensive coordinator who didn't call plays unless you're Nathaniel Hackett and you're being hired specifically to lure Aaron Rodgers to come and play for your team, which didn't happen. So not getting the Seahawks job does not mean that he is staying with the Packers forever. Las Vegas needs an offensive coordinator. Pete Carroll just got that job. Could be a fit there. We'll see. Detroit is looking for an offensive coordinator. There's been reporting that they are hoping to stay in-house there, but they have not made any hires as of now. So that is something where, you could have an opportunity. The Bears just grabbed Declan Doyle from Denver, so that was never going to be. As presumably Ben Johnson was going to have the con in Chicago, but we didn't know for sure. And then it was weird to me when Hank Fraley took the promotion to run game coordinator in Detroit without the OC job. So they need an OC in Detroit. Could Dan Campbell ask to talk to Adam Stenavich? And would Matt LaFleur, interesting question, would Matt LaFleur let him? The obvious one to me is DeMeco Ryans in Houston. They get rid of Bobby Slowick. No, Tampa Bay, they just lost their offensive coordinator as well. So Todd Bowles could have some interest in someone like Adam Stenavich as well. But Houston is the one to watch for me here, because these Shanahan tree guys tend to be extremely insular. They want their guys, someone they feel comfortable with. And he makes a ton of sense for Houston because it's an extension of what they've already been doing. So if you're going to lose Adam Stenavich, and look, who knows if you are, but I think there's a decent chance he ends up in Houston. Maybe it's not even 50-50, but even if it's 30%, if it's 40%, I think that if you're Matt LaFleur, you have to look at building out this staff, fortifying this staff. Now, Rob Demovsky reported Luke Getsy is going to return in some form or fashion. We don't know if he's going to be the quarterback's coach. He was the quarterback's coach. Just got 2 opportunities to be offensive coordinator. So could he be someone if Adam Stenavich gets a job? Do you just elevate? You hire in Luke Getsy. Well, you have some guys in-house. They don't currently have a run game coordinator. Could they bring Bobby Slowick back to be a run game coordinator? One name I want to bring up here, because when I was thinking about, okay, what would I want if I'm Matt LaFleur? And this offense to me was at its best when they had, and not because I think he was such a great coach, but because I think it was a fit in structure and ideology. 2020, 2021 with Nathaniel Hackett. That was when this Packers offense looked the best. And I think one of the reasons for that is because Hackett came from a slightly different tree of this system. He had a different, he had the connection to the verbiage and the history with Mike McCarthy and that system and what Aaron Rodgers had. And bringing those two things together, I think, was really impactful. But there is something that is beneficial to me when you can take a coach like Matt LaFleur and blend what he wants to do, because I do think he's collaborative, with someone who maybe comes from a slightly different school of thought. So the first name I thought of when I was like, okay, what could they do here is, would Doug Peterson want to come back and be an OC? Give himself a shot, call plays, doesn't bring Press Taylor with him. I remember when we talked to Kendra Middleton before the Jaguars game. That was her big, one of her big things was like, what is the deal here with Doug Peterson, with Press Taylor, with the offense who's calling plays, like all of that Michigas. We've seen Doug Peterson be a high-level football coach. We saw him take an Eagles team to the Super Bowl and win gutsy play call after gutsy play call. It was who they were. By identity. I would love to see him pull Matt LaFleur a little bit more in that direction. Plus, that Eagles offense, a lot of different pieces. He was just in Jacksonville adapting an offense with Trevor Lawrence and a young team. They, with Nick Foles and Carson Wentz, they added some of those wrinkles, some of the zone read stuff. And I know that that's in the Packers offense, but they had some interesting stuff that the Packers they don't major in. So you're getting a different perspective. It's a different kind of offense. And I think Green Bay would benefit from that. Plus you're having a steady hand in the room, someone who's been in these big games. Not that I think Doug Peterson is like the end all be all. I think he's a good coach. And so that is something that I think is worth looking at. And look, I don't think Bobby Slowick is a moron. I don't think he did a great job in Houston. I think it's hard sometimes to be the offensive coordinator for a defensive head coach. As a run game coordinator, it's just something I would look at. Matt LaFleur has a history. They were in Houston together once upon a time. So there is an opportunity there. That would be interesting to me. They could use a run game coordinator, but this is something where they have to figure out the quarterback's coach situation too. Now, I wouldn't be surprised if Luke Getsy just comes back and is the quarterback's coach. There's a familiarity with Jordan Love. That's, I think, important. Now, he was not there when Jordan Love was the starter, but maybe that's good. Maybe he's going to bring in the Jordan Love developmental bias and not the we've seen Jordan Love play bias and go, hey, look, I remember when we were working on this. Let's go back to that. Being out of the building sometimes is the best thing for a young coach or for a young quarterback. Your coach leaves, comes back, gets a fresh perspective. He dealt with Justin Fields, dealt with Gardner Minshew and Aiden O'Connell, and it was not his fault in Las Vegas. He was the fall guy in Las Vegas. And frankly, he was the fall guy in Chicago when it turned out Justin Fields just stinks. It was not his fault. He was trying to get him into heavy play action stuff and just kept running into sacks. Was trying to give him simplified half-field reads, and it didn't matter. So I don't blame Luke Getsy for that. There's a reason he got another job. He's a smart coach. And again, he spent time in college with Joe Moorhead, Mississippi State. I think given a little bit more input, he was an Aaron Rodgers favorite. But he coached Jordan Love, and I think with a little bit more input to say, hey, these are things that I think Jordan Love could be running. Whereas with Rodgers, you don't really have input. Now you could, and I think that would be something that Luke Getsy could rehab a lot with that opportunity in Green Bay. We don't know what's happening with the offensive coordinator, though. We don't know what's happening with the quarterback's coach. They do have options. They have plenty of options, but I would like to see them go out and fortify, even if it meant bringing in, you keep Adam Stenavich, bring in Doug Peterson as a senior offensive assistant. Say, Doug, just come in, help us with some of the game management stuff, help us with some ideas. I loved the fact that they brought Luke Getsy and Robert Saleh in, that a year ago, 2 years ago, they brought in Aubrey Pleasant and said, okay, you're a defensive coach. You're going to work on the offensive side of the ball and just help us figure some of this stuff out. Matt LaFleur is willing to try that stuff. I think that makes sense for the Packers to try. Guess what day it is? Guess what day it is? It's not hump day. It's Monday. So let's mock draft it up. Next. Super Bowl 59 is here. One game, two teams, endless possibilities, and there's no better way to make every play more exciting than with FanDuel Sportsbook. I guess the Packers will just have to be Super Bowl 60. That'll be fitting. Whether it's predicting the first touchdown, calling the MVP, or even betting on the coin toss, FanDuel makes it easy to get in on the action with live betting all game long. You can adjust your bets as the game unfolds and feel the thrill from kickoff to the final whistle. Live betting feature lets you stay involved no matter what happens on the field, and the app is super easy to navigate. Plus, knowing that you can place a $5 bet and potentially win $200 in bonus bets for the Super Bowl, that's icing on the cake. Download the app or head to FanDuel.com to get started. Bet just $5. And if you win, you'll score $200 in bonus bets. That's FanDuel.com. Bet with FanDuel, official partner of Super Bowl 59. All right, here's the first rule of Mock Draft Monday. I don't want to hear he's not going to be there, any of that stuff. It's not the point. It's not the point. Okay? It's not the point. Have I mentioned it's not the point? I think that the way that I do this is to figure out, okay, where are the soft spots in the draft? How does the board shake out? Oh, okay, there's all of these good receivers on day 2. Maybe you don't have to take one on day 1. Or maybe, hey, look, if you want a corner, you got to get one early. I think doing these exercises over and over helps us understand the scenarios that can play out. And frankly, I don't think teams do enough game theory when it comes to the draft. They are just like very board heavy, and they move guys up the board and they go, we need a receiver. And so we got to take one here, here, or here. And it's like, do you really think about how these things are going to shake out and how they might work out and where it makes the most sense and where history says you should take those guys? It seems to me they don't. And the Packers, I put among them. I think the Packers do a better job than most with this stuff, but no. Linebacker in the first round, 24-year-old in the first round, not great process. So let's start here. Jahdae Barron, the corner from Texas. I was just talking to our guy, Damian Parson from Locked On NFL Draft, and he was talking about Barron, and he really, really likes him. Can play outside, can play inside, will tackle, big enough, presumably will be fast enough. This is one of those positions where you do just have to be fast enough. There is a point at which you just are not fast enough to play corner in the NFL. Unless you are a special player. Like even Richard Sherman, they asked like he was like a 4.7 guy. Like I think he ran 4.56 or 4.58. Like that's slow for a corner. But like it's not prohibitively slow. And Jahdae Barron is 5'11", but he's 5'11", 200 pounds. He is thickly built. He is strong. I think with the Packers, like if he comes in 5'10 and a quarter, 200, I don't know that he can play the boundary for the Packers. So that is something to keep an eye on. So as we go through the measurement process, as we go through, Senior Bowl week and the combine, this is going to be a name to watch, and this is going to be a set of measurements to watch. If he comes in a legit 5'11 and 195 plus, Packer. But if he comes in 5'10 and a quarter and he's really 187, like that's not an unheard of exaggeration. 5'11", 200, he looks thicker than that. Like I think he's big. I think he is big for a corner. I think he is probably 195, 190 plus. He's a big enough corner. But the measurements are going to be important here. All right. In the second round, this is definitely a name to flag. Jaden Higgins. Iowa State. He's 6'4", a big body. And when we talk about a bucket getter, this is something that we've talked about a lot on the show. You want a bucket getter. He is a potential bucket getter for this team. You don't need, with the speed that you're getting from Christian Watson and that I think you can find on the open market or later in the draft. And he can win vertically. But with the speed you can create down the seam with Luke Musgrave and Jaden Reed. Jaden is, and you got another Jaden. Jaden Higgins is the kind of guy that can go win on the boundary and can just be like, I understand T. Higgins. I don't want to compare anyone to T. Higgins. He's got the right last name for it. But at his size, he is a good route runner. It's going to be, again, about the testing. Does he move well enough laterally? Keep an eye on the 3 cone. The Packers tend to like 7 or lower for a receiver. Is he too tall to be able to drop his hips? But he's got the productivity. The Packers like Senior Bowl receivers. Jaden Higgins going to the Senior Bowl. They like productive, usually multiple years of production. Jaden Higgins has multiple years of big-time production. This is a Packers type all day. I think day 2, I think second round, the Packers are going to be looking at a receiver. Third round, and they have a chance. I love the fit with Jaden Higgins in this situation. If you were throwing that go ball to Jaden Higgins instead of Dontavian Wicks against the Eagles, I think it might get completed. I think you have a better chance of it being completed. He is a type of receiver. And again, not that he is just going to go like Mike Williams, everybody, every play. Just because he's big doesn't mean he plays big. DK Metcalf does not play big. Christian Watson doesn't always play over the top. but he uses his frame really well. He moves extremely well. I think he can develop into a really nice player. This is someone that I, early on, really like. And in the third, this is one of those guys I don't think is going to be there at 87. Nick Eamon-Wari from South Carolina. He's a captain, but he's 20 years old. Big time ball production. He's 6'3", 227. He's as big as Edgerrin Cooper, but he technically played safety for South Carolina. I think the Packers need more overhang defenders. We don't know what Tyron Hopper is for them. It's Quay Walker, it's Edgerrin Cooper. Could you add a big safety like this? And again, he's basically the size of Edgerrin Cooper. And say, you are actually going to be a linebacker and we're going to play big-ish nickel. I think that makes a lot of sense. Given the run defense you're already getting from Edgerrin Cooper, like you're not giving up a ton. Now, the question then is like, is he a Sam? Because then that's problematic. If he's got to take on blocks on the edge, I think he's big enough to do it. I think he can grow into it, especially someone like him who's 20 years old and 6'3". He has the frame to make that work. Like you're 6'3", 225, let's say when you run, can you get to 235? But he's already good in coverage. Play more 3 safety looks. And just say, okay, it's not going to really be a true linebacker spot. Just play more 3 safety looks with Evan Williams, Bottled and Bond, and Xavier McKinney. I love the flexibility that would bring for Jeff Hafley. I think that would be a really fun toy to have in this defense. And so this is just something to keep an eye on. I do think a linebacker is in play for them. And I didn't get a pass rusher. Had the opportunity with the first pick to do that, but I really liked Barron. I had the opportunity with the second pick, but there were 2 receivers there that I really liked. And I just thought, you know what? It feels Packers-y to do that. They love to take receivers in the second round. It is historically where it is the smartest place to take receivers. And Higgins is a Packers type. It was too much to pass on, so had to go for it there. All right, back tomorrow. Much more as we get you set for the offseason. The Combine, the Super Bowl will be in New Orleans in a week, so a lot of fun still to come. Great interviews. It's one of my favorite things for this show specifically because Packers will be there. Non-Packers, like you can go back and listen to my interview with Rome Odunze at the Super Bowl. You can go back and listen to my interview with Romeo Dobbs at the Super Bowl. Matt Ryan talking about Matt LaFleur at the Super Bowl. You can Field Yates talking about Jeff Hafley. All the good stuff. We get a ton of good stuff at the Super Bowl every year. Follow me on Twitter, Blue Sky, social medias, Instagram. Also subscribe everywhere you get podcasts to Locked On Packers, on YouTube, Locked On Packers, so you can stay Locked On Packers.